Alrighty, welcome back guys and gals to the Blue Room, where we break down two opponents, analysing their strengths and their weaknesses to reach a conclusion on which fighter comes out victorious. And in this episode we'll be covering Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou, which goes down in Saudi Arabia on October 28th. If you're new to the channel, this is an ongoing series, so if you're a fan of the sport, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button to help expand our community. Now first, let's address the elephant in the room. We have ourselves a freak show fight. However, in this case, I cannot see how it goes wrong. Francis Ngannou is a powerhouse, and having a lack of experience did not stop him from becoming the undisputed heavyweight UFC champion. The man is a physical specimen with dynamite in both hands, and in my opinion, Tyson Fury's three best fights were when he fought another foe with dynamite in his hands, Deontay Wilder. Now, even if you are still skeptical, let me offer you this. We have 4 fights taking place this year: Usyk versus Dubois, Dillian Whyte versus Anthony Joshua, and hopefully Deontay Wilder versus Ruiz. So even if you despise this fight, all of these fights set up the dream matchups for the beginning of 2024. And just imagine if somehow Francis Ngannou flatlines the Gypsy King convincingly, and with that the interest we'd have for the likes of Ngannou versus Usyk, Anthony Joshua, or Deontay Wilder. So freak show or not, I am excited for this fight. And if you are too, let's move on to the tail of the tape. First, we look at Tyson, the Gypsy King Fury. He has a record of 33 wins, 0 losses, and 1 controversial draw. He's held the WBC heavyweight title since 2020. Previously, he held the unified WBA, IBF, WBO, and IBO titles from 2015 to 2016, and the Ring Magazine title twice between 2015 and 2022. He is 6'9" in height with a reach of 85 inches. Believe it or not, this man is still only 34 years old, which for many would still be considered in his prime, and his stance is orthodox. Standing opposite him will be the Predator, Francis Ngannou, who has a boxing record of 0 wins, 0 losses. However, let's consider his MMA record, where he has 17 wins, 3 losses, and 0 draws. He's 6'4" in height with a reach of 83 inches. He's 36 years old, which to be honest I think is questionable, and he also stands in orthodox, with stance being an advantage for Ngannou simply because he's new to the sport. However, the stats that really stand out to me are of course the height, reach, and experience advantages the Gypsy King holds over Ngannou. We also have to consider that Francis was out, I believe, for over a year healing from knee surgery, so we will explore those factors shortly, but let's look at both fighters' strengths and their weaknesses. Beginning with Francis Ngannou's strengths. This is a big man, not only in terms of height and width, but also bone density. If you see the size of his hands, his wrists, it's no surprise that Francis Ngannou holds the current record for the hardest punch in the world, having clocked a striking power of 129,161 units on a power cub machine. Now, earlier in his UFC career, he was often matched against MMA legends of the sport to where he knew a lot about them, but they did not know enough about him. You see, most heavyweights hit hard, and the problem was, if his opponent was willing to stand in the pocket and Francis smells danger, you can see it firsthand. His receptors turn on, and from where he often looks unbalanced, he all of a sudden becomes incredibly accurate and deadly in a split second, to where in all scenarios, standing and banging, he is victorious against well-known heavy hitters. Additionally, Francis Ngannou is no longer green, at least in the octagon. In his last 2 performances, he showed himself to be composed, and he really didn't have a choice but to adapt after his first loss to one of the heavyweight greats in MMA, Stipe Miocic, because in that fight he was wild, constantly on the offense, but even then, after being dominated via fundamental MMA techniques, he remained dangerous throughout. It was after that fight that he learned to pace himself and not only dominate in the rematch versus Stipe Miocic using strikes, but also in the wrestling, which was never his game. And that ability to listen to coaches, to adapt, and show a level of self-awareness that he wasn't who he once thought he was, makes for a very dangerous opponent. And I'll be very curious to see how he takes that mindset into the sport of boxing, once again a sport he has 0 experience in, not even the amateurs. It's pretty crazy, right? We move on to Ngannou's weaknesses, but I'll only focus on the weaknesses which I believe would translate into boxing. The first being that Ngannou is often off balance. He's a big man carrying a lot of muscle, and when fighters are on the outside not willing to stand in the pocket, you'll find that Francis often will throw wild punches to where he struggles struggles to reset afterwards. And related to that, he will often telegraph his punches, more so when he's not composed, when he's frustrated, especially when he's being picked apart on the outside. We saw that often in his last MMA fight against Cyril Gane, to where Francis was able to adapt via the use of takedowns, but of course in boxing he does not have that opportunity, so I will be curious to see how he adapts to Fury's outside offensive game. Francis also doesn't throw feints, at least meaningful feints, but I will get into the nuances of this when we cover both fighters' keys to victory. However, for now, let's move on to Tyson Fury's strengths, and we might as well start with feints. Tyson Fury throws a lot of feints. So many feints he will leave you feeling nauseous, because there is a lot of herky-jerky movement involved, which in turn leaves his opponents second guessing what he's gonna do. And I have to say, for such a big man, it is impressive how he can maintain his gas tank all 12 rounds. Not only does Fury have a long reach, but most importantly, he knows how to utilize it, and he does so consistently. Earlier in his career, or at least during his first fights in America, he would keep himself at range defensively, but I believe it was after the first Deontay Wilder fight where his offensive range really leveled up. After 3 classic wars against the tall, lanky, top-heavy Deontay Wilder, and his follow-up dominant victory against Dillian Whyte, who was more than game, but sadly ended up getting flatlined via an inside uppercut, Fury really understands how to take advantage of his opponent's body types. With smaller men, he'll pick them apart on the outside and utilize uppercuts in the pocket, and as mentioned before, with lankier, top-heavy fighters, he knows how to stay offensive on the outside, and when on the inside, there's a lot of clinch work, resting on his opponent's shoulders, or even on their back when they're crouched down, and utilizing his weight to wear them down and take away their stamina. Now, if all the strengths mentioned so far weren't enough, now include the fact this man has superb footwork, attacking from awkward angles, and if he is on the defense, he has much success evading looping hooks, using head movement and slips, which are often followed up by double jabs, keeping his opponent at bay. And lastly, I'll touch upon a strength of which I feel will play a role in this fight. You see, Tyson Fury has proven in his recent fights that when he chooses to sit down on his punches, he can be just as devastating as his foes, knocking down or finishing the likes of Deontay Wilder twice, as well as knocking out Dillian Whyte, again in devastating fashion. Whatever you might feel about Tyson Fury, whether you like him or you don't, one thing is for sure, he is an anomaly, and based on his heavyweight dominance, I don't think it's irrational to say that Tyson Fury has the perfect physical structure for heavyweight boxing. He is center heavy in terms of his fat placement, but yet he's long and lanky, with very little muscle to slow him down, which means he has a speed advantage, a reach advantage, but also a weight advantage when he chooses to lean on you as the taller man. But the keys to victory are just around the corner. Let's first address Tyson Fury's weaknesses, which is difficult because after all of Fury's adversities, having his back against the wall in many a fight, you could argue he is the complete fighter. However, we have seen in the past when Fury is not on the offensive trying to finish his opponent, but is instead lackadaisically coasting to a decision win, he has been caught in brutal fashion, which now leads me to Francis Ngannou's keys to victory, and the most obvious one being that Francis has a puncher's chance, because earlier on in Fury's career he has been knocked down by Pajkic, Cunningham, and of course Deontay Wilder in their very first and third fight. But with that being said, I believe Fury will know full well what he's dealing with. Francis will not be able to box toe to toe with Fury, and I don't think he will have success pushing forward, throwing lunging hooks either. I believe Francis's key to victory is playing the psychological game, and the long game at that. He needs to give Fury a false sense of security, throwing hooks but staying out of danger, remaining defensively sound, specifically keeping his head intact, and in the later rounds, whilst Fury assumes that Ngannou hasn't got a clue what he's doing, thus Tyson will try and coast to a decision win. Past round 5, I would like to see Ngannou utilize a lunging forward straight, followed up by a strong jab. Why do I think he should utilize straights in the later rounds? Because he needs Fury to develop patterns in the early rounds based upon the danger of Francis Ngannou's wild hooks. I really can't see Fury risking his legacy standing in the pocket with Francis Ngannou. So once Fury gets comfortable on the outside and feels that Ngannou is not a threat, this will give Ngannou an opportunity to disrupt Fury's patterns and attack straight down the middle, finding success like he has done against the likes of Stipe Miocic in their second fight. Additionally, Ngannou must stay completely composed in this fight. MMA athletes often make the mistake thinking that because they're well versed in multiple disciplines, that those training regimes will translate into boxing, when in all reality, MMA gives fighters the opportunity to rest their deltoids, their biceps, their triceps, their leg muscles. The list goes on. Ngannou has no experience maintaining a pace under immense pressure, throwing nothing but punch variations for 12 rounds. So for the next 3 months, having a camp focused on punch repetition whilst traversing forward and backwards will be key to ensuring he's ready for a 12-round fight. As for Tyson Fury, all odds are in his favor. I'm expecting Fury to double up his jab on the outside, throwing a lot of feints to get reads from Ngannou. I believe by the 3rd round he'll utilize a clinch, throwing hooks to the body, putting down on Ngannou's neck and pushing him against the ropes to keep him off balance. I think the overall strategy for Fury will be to wear Francis down, and in the later rounds employ a similar strategy to what he had against Deontay Wilder, using forward pressure, throwing heavy lever and looking to get Francis out of there. However, I only see Fury employing this strategy in the later rounds if he has a sense of security that Ngannou's stamina has dwindled enough to where he essentially becomes a heavy bag for Fury to beat up on. I genuinely think this is going to be a fantastic fight, and if I were to give my prediction, I'm picking Fury to win by round 8. By TKO, I envision a ref stoppage with Francis Ngannou against the ropes, hands down, mouth wide open, and let me just say, there's no shame in that. I really do admire Francis Ngannou's plight. Do I think he's a bit naive, expecting to come out victorious in this fight? Yes, but I also think this is a win-win situation for him. He clearly hasn't fumbled the bag, and even if he loses to arguably the greatest heavyweight boxer of all time, which, let's be honest, sets him up for more big fights ahead, with the losers of Usyk vs Dubois, Joshua vs White, and Wilder vs Ruiz. However, in this fight, after round 5, I believe Francis the Predator Ngannou is going to get dog walked. But that's just my opinion. Let me know how you think this fight is going to go. Do you think Ngannou is going to shock the world? Are we going to end up seeing Usyk versus Ngannou? Imagine how crazy that would be, especially if the Francis hype was deserved. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this tactical breakdown. Please be so kind as to leave a like. I will be creating these breakdowns for the other big fights previously mentioned, so do make sure to subscribe, share with a friend, argue, debate, and I will see you guys soon. Take care, peace.